On the list of potential contenders in 2024, talking about Governor Ron DeSantis out of Florida. Last week, he spent the day with our guest in Dunedin, Florida. Her name is Salena Zito, national political reporter of the Washington Examiner. Salena, good morning to you. Twice in 4 days we've had you on. So you're becoming a regular around here. Good morning to you. Dunedin is about 30 minutes due west of Tampa, right? He's in New York City today. He was in Fox and Friends earlier talking about law and order. Listen, you were with him. The ultimate question is whether or not he's running. Did you ask him? And if you did, what did you hear?
So I knew he wasn't going to answer the question because he hasn't answered that question with anyone. And I didn't want to bog the interview down there with him. So I said, how many times are you asked? And then he really opened up. He talked about how often people that, not political types, but people that, that live in Florida, but also that people that vacation in Florida, which is a lot of people, just constantly come up to him. I saw it myself as we walked around his hometown, people encouraging him to run, thanking it, coming from all different states across the country, including his own, and also Canada. And he really opened up about, and seemed almost surprised at the amount of support that he gets. It's really, I think it's worth the read to see how he reacts.
I checked out both your pieces over the weekend. A couple of things he talked about this morning. He's got a book coming out at the end of this month, 28th of February, right around the corner. The legislative session begins in Tallahassee on March 8th. They've got a supermajority for Republicans. They can pass all kinds of things, right? He talked about that last hour with Fox and Friends. Watch.
People look at Florida, they're like, man, the governor's gotten a lot done, and we have, and we're proud of it. You ain't seen nothing yet. This is going to be the most productive legislative session we have had across the board, and I think people are going to be really excited.
So what he can do then, whatever they pass, he can campaign on that. I know you're aware of that. But here's what struck me. Here's one of the headlines. DeSantis, people don't want agenda being shoved down their throats. He's talked about that a lot. Call for number 4. He said this about Washington, D.C., which I don't think a lot of people pick up on. He said, too much power has accumulated in D.C., and the result is a detached administrative state that rules over us and imposes its will on us. While there are a host of things that need to be done to reconstitutionalize government, parceling out federal agencies to other parts of the country could help reduce the negative effects of this accumulation of power. Now, that could be a fine distinction between him and the rest of the Republican field, which brings us to the question, how does he differentiate himself on policy with Donald Trump?
Well, I think here's how he does that on policy. It's what happens between March, whatever the date that they go into session, until June. What is he able to accomplish? Sometimes your own party is the party that holds you up when you do things. So how does he negotiate that ramp? And what kind of things is he able to accomplish in his state? I think when he comes out of that, and if he is successful, he isn't going to be able to say, here's the policies that I put forward in my state. They are applicable to other states across the country in different ways. And this is what makes me different. And I think he can also say, I didn't lose 3 elections in a row. I mean, but I don't think you're going to see DeSantis at this moment or until session is over go after Trump. He's going to be very sort of dismissive, very Reagan about, that 11th commandment, thou shalt not, attack other Republicans. And I think that's the mantra he's going to go forward with.
I saw Casey DeSantis did what amounts to a war on drugs campaign at the end of last week. I mean, listen, that's something with regard to fentanyl that everyone can relate to, and it's been too long since we've gone there. Last point. Some suggest he spot Donald Trump too much of a lead. Has he?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, at this point in 2007, Jeb Bush was ahead by, 2015, Jeb Bush was ahead by a mile, the former Florida governor. At this point in 2007, Hillary Clinton was ahead over Barack Obama by a mile. Things change. And I think that this is going to be a very dynamic a race. I think people are going to go towards someone who is bold in their propositions to the country, but is also aspirational, that wants to make people part of something bigger themselves in terms of the Republican primary candidates. Okay, so that's where the voters are, in my experience.
All right, Salena, thank you for your time. Salena Zito, you can read it in the New York Post. Thank you for your time. And Dana and I want to wish your father the best.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Get better soon, sir.
Yes.
You get better soon.
His name is Ron. He was putting up an American flag and fell down, and so we hope his back gets 100% very soon.
Do you know that he yelled at her sister, telling her to pick up the flag because it's never supposed to touch the ground, as he was getting in the ambulance? So this guy's a patriot, and we appreciate him and you. Thanks, Salena.
Thanks, Salena, for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.